Welcome to BWTM and this edition of Inside Story. We ask the questions you want the answers to. And now our host, Ingram Jones.
Good evening and welcome to Bayloric TV. I'm your host Ingram Jones, and on the show tonight we've got boxing promoter from the UK, Steve Goodwin. This interview is a little different because Steve, as a boxing promoter, covers a lot of topics, not just about handling fighters or promoting fighters, but more about the behind the scenes running of boxing. For me, I found this a very interesting interview. Steve was very open in the interview with his comments, and it makes for interesting listening. So let's get into it. Hello, good evening, Steve. How are you?
Yeah, I'm very good, thank you, Ingram. A pleasure to speak with you.
Thank you so much for agreeing to speak to Bayloric TV.
No problem at all.
So how are you today or this evening?
All good. Well, it's a Sunday night, isn't it? So it's been a relaxing weekend. We're getting back in the swing of things, and the work really starts again next week.
Okay, so for for people that know nothing about Steve Goodwin, I know a little bit about Steve Goodwin. I know you're a boxing promoter in the UK. Well, that's what I know. You could be more than that, so please elaborate.
Okay, well, I mean, basically, I'm a financial advisor by trade. That's what I do.
Okay.
I invest money. That's what I've been doing for 25 years, and that's where I've made all my money. And I got into boxing promoting 2.5 years ago.
So you're a bit like Misha Rosado. You kind of like got in about 2 years ago, but you were doing something else before, and you jumped in to get into.
I still am, and I still am doing the other things. I run a horse racing business as well. I've run that for 20 years. Boxing's just an add-on. My income is still from the financial business. That's where I make my living. Boxing is a glorified hobby business, I think you could probably call it.
Wow, that's quite interesting, because I listened to an interview recently with Eddie Hearn, and Eddie Hearn was talking about how Matchroom are able to take a hit because they've got other things on the outside, other ventures, not just in boxing, but in snooker and other sports that Matchroom can rely on. Where something like, Frank Warren, for example, has got basically boxing. That's what Frank Warren is. So
that's the problem out there with, if you look at the promoters, UK based, the ones that depend on boxing for a living are very restricted as to what they can actually do. So there's a limit to how far they can go or how much they're prepared to do. They're not going to invest or take a view on a boxer or a situation because it's their living. For me, my living comes elsewhere, so I can take a view on a boxing situation and say, well, I will invest in this box, or I will do something outside the box. And I can do that because my livelihood is not dependent on what happens in boxing.
Okay.
It enables me to be a bit more adventurous and a bit more fluid in what I do and think outside the box.
Okay, so let me go back because I interrupted your little flow there. Sorry. So you were talking about who you were. You're a boxing promoter now. You do stuff outside of boxing.
Yes. And I'll continue to do that. I look after a lot of money for clients, investments, mortgages, tax planning. That's what I do. That's what I'm qualified in. So I've got my education in that area, and that's what I do, and that's where I earn my money. Boxing, as I say, is a glorified hobby that I got into by accident, and once I do something, I'll give it a go. But it's a very, very, very hard world. Very hard world.
I'm really you are so honest and open, and you're not claiming to be something that you're not. You're actually saying that, you know what, I'm in this business for like 2 years now, and it's it's a hobby which I enjoy. Obviously, you must enjoy it.
Of course.
But you're aware that the other things outside of boxing are you don't play with that. If you understand what I'm saying, you are very aware that you can take a hit and take a chance because of your outside or the other things that have been a success. If they weren't a success, Steve Goodwin wouldn't be able to do what he's doing now, correct?
Steve Goodwin wouldn't be in boxing because I wouldn't be doing boxing on a shoestring and on a situation where I'd have to just be running around trying to nick £100 and £200 from this, that, and the other. It wouldn't interest me. It's about having setting up something that's got longevity, but I can push the boat out and look to do something. But what's key with me is I'm funding it myself. I haven't got outside funding, haven't got a big sponsor, haven't got multi-millionaire throwing money at me. Everything I do is done within my own capabilities. But it's enjoyable to do that.
So then that would make you you would be very, because you're a financial advisor first and foremost, you wouldn't be making silly investments.
Correct. Absolutely correct. And everything is calculated. When I did, we can talk about that later, the Audley Harrison Ali Adams fight, that was a total calculation. And people thought I was mad, but I wasn't mad. But I will invest in a boxer, but my demands on a boxer that I would invest in are very, very high. And I was told by one boxer once, when I said to them, unless you do this, I'm firing you. They said, you can't just fire a boxer. I said, if I'm giving to you, you've got to give to me. And it's as simple as that, really. And because it's not my living, I can say to them, look, it's got to be a 50-50 call.
Wow. So you have an advantage over, without being funny, you've got more of an advantage over Frank Warren, although Frank Warren's been in the game a lot longer than you, and probably is the more established name. You say Steve Goodwin, you say Frank Warren. Frank Warren is known because he's been in the game for a long time, and known worldwide. However, the limitations with Frank Warren is it's just boxing he's got, whereas Steve Goodwin's got he's got more areas to pull from, you could say, in terms of financial resources, which would make you more flexible and, as you're saying, able to make a call on something that maybe Frank Warren couldn't do, or would have to duck and dive a lot more to get the money and to...
Correct.
Okay, so...
But I'm a financial advisor, so I'm financially astute. I don't commit financial suicide, so everything is thought through, and I know my maximum loss from something, and I will take a decision as to whether that's a viable loss.
But the question would be, Steve, there's Box Nation, which is associated with Frank Warren. Steve Goodwin could do the same thing, right?
I probably wouldn't want to commit that amount of resources. If you look at their set of accounts that they've just published, the accounts are showing a £2 million loss. Wow. Do I really feel that I would want to put a £2 million loss into a television station? The answer to that would be no, because I work for everything I've got. I'm not going to gamble everything I have on a TV station. And I don't actually think the viewing figures in boxing, to be honest, are good enough to warrant that sort of investment. That's my view.
Wow. And that's coming from a guy that's involved in boxing.
Well, I know viewing figures, and I know if you look at over here, Spencer Fearon took on a contract with Premier Sports. It was a bit. I think they announced it as a 6-fight. Well, it lasted 2 because the viewing figures weren't good enough. And I'm talking honestly and openly. Everybody in boxing, or not everybody, but a lot of people, they don't tell the sad as it is, but realistically, the viewing figures are not good enough in boxing.
And why do you think that is?
Because generally there's 2 issues. The quality of fights that are put on. Well, I wouldn't say that was Spencer's show. Spencer Fearon did fairly good shows, but the general quality of fights are mismatches and one-sided, and the public has become disenfranchised with it because also there's no terrestrial television. So consequently, even if you look at a lot of the Sky shows, which are staged, and even the Matchroom shows, you generally know who is going to win. We knew that, for example, Darren Barker would smash Hope. We knew that Carl Foch would demolish Yusuf Mack. Now, these sort of fights that are topping the bill are, in my opinion, mismatches. In the old days, when we go back to the 80s, where we had terrestrial television coverage, you had Ben Eubank, you had fights on television that were
50-50,
60-40, 65-35. They weren't 90-10, 85-15. And the public have become disenfranchised. And I know that from the small hall shows, in that if we stage a show at the York Hall in London on a Saturday evening, when I came into boxing, I thought, as a promoter, I would sell 400 or 500 tickets. Well, you can drop that down to about 1/10 of that. No matter how much you do, you will be lucky to get, and again, I'm talking honestly and openly, which other people don't do, if I could sell 70 tickets at York Hall, 70 to 80 tickets at York Hall outside what the boxers sell, that would be fair going.
All right.
And that will surprise you.
Let me ask you this, or let me put it to you this way. In today's technological world, where we've got social media, which is so big, Facebook, Twitter, Skype, which is what we have now. We're having this conversation, and you're the first to admit this is the first time you've been on Skype. Do you think fighters do enough to promote themselves online?
Some do, some don't. I think you see some of them are really active on the Twitter. They're active on Facebook. Others don't. I think the biggest problem, apart from fighters, though, is the promoting of the fights. Is the fact that managers don't want to put their fighters in together. They're so massively paranoid with preserving unbeaten records, and that caused the problem, because even if a boxer gets a fan, if he's continuing to win 6-round fights against journeymen who don't throw up, who just cover up, in the end their fans will get fed up. So everybody's getting fed up. Boxers will lose their ticket sales.
But you know the funny thing is, and you've probably seen me have these ding dongs on Twitter over and over and over again. A guy's got a record of 25 fights, 25 knockouts, never fought a guy that's punched him back, but somehow they perceive that individual to be the best thing since sliced bread. But he's never fought anybody. He's never fought anybody that wants to punch him back. Yet
and that's the answer as to why people don't like the way they got low viewing figures. Because it's total nonsense. You've got these American heavyweights. They're fighting club fighters, and then they just don't get these records. And as soon as they go over anybody, it's about they're going to get beat. And we've seen, for example, even recently, people like Kevin Johnson. As soon as he was moved out of he went to Klitschko, then he's fought Tyson Fury. They're moved out of those club fight scenarios, and they're exposed for what they are. And it's just boring. It's just boring.
So I remember back to the Big Fight Live, on ITV. That was a Saturday night. You didn't go to the club. You stayed at home to watch Ben and Eubank. That was it. 10 o'clock, prime time viewing on 9, 10 o'clock. Jim Rosenthal, Reg Guthridge, Jim Watt, Barry. You were there. You sat down, and that was it. That was what you were into.
And the public had bought into boxing, and the fights they were delivering were exciting. Not just Ben Eubank. You had things like Michael Watson fighting. Whoever it was, he got beaten by the. But you had fights generally. Terry Marsh fights were good. They had plenty of fights. They were all events. Yeah. And I think what Eddie Hearn's trying to do with Matchroom is trying to bring those events back. And I think they're trying to do a good job. But I have another issue with how this is being run from that point of view, because if you give somebody a monopoly, you are then able to force fight purses down, which in effect is going to stop the good fights being staged here. So what you're now going to get is Kilbrook going to America to fight Devon Alexander, whereas in the old days, we'd be able to stage these fights over here. Our lads have been sent over aboard as cannon fodder to the Americans. I'm not saying Brooks cannon fodder, but Gavin Rees is cannon fodder for Adrian Broner. And this is what's now happening. So you're going to get the fights over here where they've built up their records, and then they're going to be shipped off aboard for the big fights.
But there are fans that actually believe that Gavin Rees is going to give Adrian Broner a tough fight. I can't see it, to be honest.
Oh, come on. I'll give up promoting if Gavin... I love Gavin Rees's trainer, Gary Lockett. If Gavin Rees beats Adrian Broner, I'll give up promoting, because it means I know nothing about boxing. It's ridiculous. He's going to get... It's just a question of how he gets beaten. It's just a mismatch.
It is. Unfortunately, I think it is. I mean, if we went toe-to-toe with Derry Matthews for 10 rounds... and you would never think in your wildest dream to put Derry Matthews in the same ring as Adrian Broner.
Right, exactly. I mean, listen, I love Gavin Rees and the way he fights. I mean, he's a real, top guy, but it's a step too far. But the point is, Gavin's after the money. He's going to get a big pay, but he'll lose. But then what does it do? That you're then going to get the fact that we need British fighters to be winning these titles. And, you can say Nathan Cleverly, but he's not really fighting anybody. That doesn't count. And then you've got Carl Froch, who's fantastic. But Garrett Sam Carl Froch, where are we? Ricky Burns is a good fighter, but he's still yet to fight somebody on the way up. He's catching the ones on the way down. I like taking the up-and-coming prospects and see what happens when you match somebody who's on the way up rather than on the way down. So, and what we've got now, we haven't got a fighter over here who's doing it. The middleweights are all going aboard to lose to Sergio Martinez. Derek Chisora, when you spoke to Don Charles, he's being sent aboard as the opponent all the time. I hope he'll beat Manuel Shah. But where are we staging these big fights over here now and bringing the international fighters over here of the highest level? Apart from the Cole, the only one that I would say is different is the Cole Froch Lucian Bute fight.
Absolutely. Carl Froch is, but the Super Six stopped a lot of nonsense. It made fighters come together. But
it didn't happen over here, did it? It was being shown on prime time.
Yes.
It was originally on prime time, which has a limited audience.
Yes.
It was mainly Carl Froch was being sent aboard. So what did that do for the British public and boxing? Nothing. Carl Froch can still probably walk down the street and not be recognised. So something is wrong.
Absolutely. I mean, there was who else was I going to mention as well? What about the prize fight? How do you think the prize fighter works?
I quite like it. I think the public are buying into prize fighter. I think that helps, and people can slate it off, but it does give opportunities, and I think again that's a good concept that's been brought in, and it does elevate some fighters up in the rankings and gives them chances. I mean, it gave Audley Harrison a world title fight with David Haye, didn't it? So, I think prize fight has a purpose. Whether there's too many of them now and it's losing a little bit of its impetus possibly, but I still think it offers boxers a chance for payday, which at the moment with the purses that are out there, they're getting to area title level and the purse levels are terrible.
Okay, what about some of these fighters who have records of 21, 22, 23 and 0, and they're talking about world title fights, but the process of them being jumped from British and domestic level right to world level, there doesn't seem to be any in between anymore. People just seem to get fast tracked to world title fights.
It does happen, but that's the same even at levels of. There's plenty of managers that will manage their fighters to 15 and 0. There's a kid who's around about 12, 13, 14, 15 and 0, and I'm not going to mention his name. It was absolutely shocking. And I've got some novice fighters in our camp that would absolutely demolish him. Yeah, he'll be groomed and he'll get a British title fight and he'll get absolutely smashed. What's the point? What's the point? He sells a few tickets, I guess, but the person who are going to make money out of him. But in terms of what it's doing for boxing and crowd support and people to come back to watch these fights, is doing absolutely nothing. It's just not. Boxing is struggling because we're not getting the viewing figures apart from the very, very big matchroom.
It seems to me also that if a guy's got a good crowd following, I'll go a little further and elaborate. If a guy's got a good crowd following and he's smashing a few guys up, that it's like, oh, he's got a good following. Yeah, he's got a big punch. But you can see the fight yourself. You can see every time he goes and fights, he's getting tagged with punches left, right, and centre. I mean, this is just like not even domestic. This is like below British title level. This is Absolutely. Southern area level, and you get tagged with punches by guys that are journeymen, and a journeyman that were never good even in their prime, and they're getting tagged with them sort of shots. And you only begin to wonder what's going to happen when they get to British title level. You're lying to the fans first and foremost.
Correct.
He's good. I could definitely see him at British title level. I could see him at European level. Oh, I could see him at world level. And you, the commentator, you, the pundit, are lying to the fans. So the fans get behind this guy, pay their money to see this guy fight, and they say, yeah, let's get him a British title fight. So he might get a British title fight, and he might get through a British title fight. Then you step him up to European and world level, he gets exposed. What happens then? Yep. That's another fan that's disillusioned because of you're selling something to the fans, which is not true.
Correct, and that's the problem. You say we always say you can fool some of the people some of the time. You can't fool all of the people all of the time, and that's the problem with boxing. And everybody's in denial. They'll say the sport's in good hands, but if you look at the fights out there, even that are on Box Nation, that sometimes you look at the audience isn't there, and they come in and watch the fight that they've come to watch, and then they leave. And what we're trying to change is we want people to come to watch boxing and want to watch all the fights. The problem you've got with boxing is people just come to watch their one fight and then disappear off down the pub because they're not really interested in the boxing. They're just supporters of one boxer, and that is what it's like up and down the country now.
Wow. So the situation with you had James DeGale and George Groves. They fought quite early in their careers.
Yeah.
They thought that was great for boxing, but it was still, in terms of pressure, Chris, quite young, quite. They were novices in terms of the amount of fights they had.
Yeah. But that was a good fight that caught the public's imagination.
Absolutely did.
So that was what you'd want to see more of because that was a fight where everybody watched it. I remember that night we had about 60 people around my house. We had a party and everybody wanted to watch the fight. It was an event. And that's what we need. But
it was an event, not because of George Groves, and no disrespect to George Groves, but because of James DeGale's mouth.
Correct.
All right?
That's always been part of it, though, hasn't it?
Now, this is the thing. Fans seem to think that the person's got a big mouth. That's their personality. But I'm all pointed down to the fact that it's them going out to sell tickets for the fight.
Correct.
Let's be honest. If James DeGale said to George Groves, yeah, I'm going to beat you up, we're going to have a fight, and that's it, there's no way it would have sold the way it would have sold if the way James conducted himself on Sky Sports. I mean, he was on ringside. That whole thing there, and the way he was talking to George Groves, disrespectfully or not, that sold the fight.
with Hay and Chisora.
Exactly. You know, again.
And we'll have Tyson Fury, David Price.
Sold the fight. And our friend Tyson Fury. His constant rants and raves about David Price being a plumber and all the rest of it, which he is in real life, you know, he's a qualified plumber. But at the end of the day, if Tyson Fury doesn't run up his mouth and say these things, that fight, David Price is a lovely guy, but he's not going to run his mouth up and start saying this and that, the other. It's not David Price.
No,
but
exactly.
Somebody's got to have a big mouth, it seems, in boxing. But, you know, it don't matter if you can fight. If you've got a big mouth, you sell. Fighting helps.
Correct. No, but hasn't it always been the same? Muhammad Ali, you know, that's been, you know, he brought that in, and that's been pretty much the same. Unless you're going to get the fights, the big fights, the really big fights that can sell without that. But generally, that's part of it now. And well, you had it with Eubank and Ben in the 80s, didn't you? And Ben Watson, and you had the villain, and you know, it was that's just how it was. But I think that's okay. I don't have a real problem with that as long as it's not too offensive. But I think you've got to look at the boxing as a product is not attracting the viewers that people would believe. But and that people are saying, oh, this TV station is showing this TV station is showing that. But if you actually look beneath the figures as to how many people are actually earning from that and how many viewers they're getting from that, it isn't working. And Box Nation haven't got, from what I understand, the viewing figures that they would have hoped and expected. And Box Nation's a fantastic channel. Offers so many.
Let me throw something else at you, Steve, and let's be on the real here, all right? On the absolute real. Why should I come to your show? Why should I pay not me personally, why should I pay X amount of money a month or pay for Sky when I can get it on my laptop for free? Why?
And that's true, isn't it? Everybody can download anything for nothing, can't they?
Yeah, well, why am I going to come to Steve Goodwin's promotion or Eddie Hearn or fly to America when I can sit down, watch the fight in the comfort of my home, get a couple of beers with my mates and sit down and watch the fight? Why am I going to come out there apart from the experience?
Well, I think if we go back to the 80s, when I'll answer that question with a question. It didn't stop people in the 1980s when it was on terrestrial television, ITV, having packed out arenas around the country, did it?
But the internet...
And that was free. And but the internet doesn't matter because people could see it on IT. The people that would be able to come would have been people who lived in Britain. Everybody in Britain could watch ITV in the 1980s, so there was nobody disenfranchised from watching it, and yet the arenas were packed. So I ask you the question, why should that make any difference? It shouldn't, because it worked in the past, because the product that's on offer is not good enough. The fighters that are on offer are not well known enough, so people aren't going to go.
Let me spin it on you this way. I would say that today's fighters don't have the personalities, and that's a big statement. They don't have the personalities that we had back in the time of Ben, Eubank, Watson, Collins, Calzaghe. Well, even Calzaghe, his personality wasn't the greatest. He's a great fighter, but the personality just wasn't there, being honest. But when you look at personalities, Prince Nazim Hamid, I mean, how many guys did come over the top rope and jump in the ring and do the things Naz did? Naz was extraordinary. Chris Eubank, the posing, all that sort of stuff. Now we've got that with Chris Eubank Jr., but it's not the same. And until Chris Eubank fights somebody of note, it won't be the same.
I agree. But I think you're spot on there. And that's where the problem is that people aren't identifying with the fighters. And that's the difficulty, because people are too, you know, everybody's worried about making a few pounds here and a few pounds there, rather than building up the fighter's profile and getting people out there, which we tried to do, and that's what we're trying to do. But you're absolutely right. Why is anybody going to go unless you're offering a product that somebody wants to go see? And an experience of watching 10 one-sided fights is not really going to get people out of their chair. And I think our problem is that even when we put shows on, they're not like that. But it's taken a while to get people to come to actually realise that. If we look at our show that we did a show in September at York Hall, and at the last fight, everybody had stayed. So nobody had come and gone. The arena was packed till the last fight, because every fight was an event, and that's what we have to get to do. But that doesn't happen out there very much now. And that's the problem. So people have become apathetic. So yeah, the boxing aficionados will sit there and think, well, I can watch Box Nation, I can watch Sky, I can catch everything else on the internet, I can watch delayed fights a week after on the internet. Why bother going?
Wow, that's a sad state of affairs. Why do you think, in terms of personalities, why do you think we don't have the personalities that we had back yesteryear?
That's difficult. I mean, I try to tell each boxer they've got to develop a personality. I think I actually don't know. I think a lot of people don't like anything out of the ordinary. I try to get boxers to do a bit different ring entrances and that sort of thing. Some of them don't like it. They think it's a bit too cheesy, which is fair enough, but it does capture the imagination. But, you know, if they're not happy with it, you can't really do a lot with it. And we had a boxer who fought, which is such a shame he's injured, a guy called Yassine El-Machi.
We know him.
Now, I promoted him when he was down in the dumps, and we got him to number 20 in the world. And it was only the fact he was injured I couldn't go further with him. But he gave everything. He was a fantastic. He had a character. People did, he was a Marmite character, but I love him. I think he's great. But the problem was, unfortunately, we couldn't develop him. I was going to put him up for an IBF title, but he had that personality. He'd have been the hated one everybody wanted to beat, but he had the personality to do something. It was just unfortunate that he got that knee injury. But that's what you need in boxing. You need plenty of people like him who've got some sort of colour, and they're colourful and people can identify with them.
I know that he was trying to get a fight with Kell Brook and kept asking for a fight with Kell Brook, and Kell Brook, for whatever reason, wasn't interested. He thought, well, who have you fought? Why should I fight you?
Yeah, well, the thing was, at that time, we offered Kell Brook. This is before Kell Brook was at the level he's at now.
Yes.
I offered Kell Brook 50,000.
Okay.
And at that time, he wouldn't have earned 50,000. And I offered Kell Brook 50,000 to get in the ring with El-Machi, and he was fighting people ranked lower than El-Machi in the rankings instead for less money. So you answer the question, why didn't he take it? He's fighting people. So it's just a nonsense. It's because El-Machi, whether you think he could have beaten Kell Brook or not, he was a threat. He was a threat to Kell Brook at that time. They didn't want it.
And so now Kell Brook's going to fight for the world title. No, he's the
against Devin Alexander.
At the IBF in America. Is he ready? I mean, has he had the right fight to prepare?
Well, I'd like to see. We'd obviously like to see Kell Brook win, wouldn't we?
Absolutely.
But I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I'm still of the opinion with Kell Brook that he hasn't fought a true up and coming fighter who's really on the way up. I think he's fought fighters who are on the way down or have lost the ambition that they had in their careers. He hasn't fought somebody on the up. And that's really important. You've got to fight some people that are hungry. Listen, it's a brilliant piece of, in terms of getting the world title opportunities. Eddie Hearn has turned him into a non-attraction to a big attraction.
Yes.
Because people come to watch Kell Brook, and that's fantastic. So Eddie Hearn's doing a brilliant job promoting him. So, I think that's...
But that's a promoter's job, isn't it? He's doing what he has to do, and he's doing a damn good job with it.
But we'll see now whether, when he fights Devin Alexander, whether the job is complete or not. If he goes to Devin Alexander and gets well beaten, then you would just say, well, it's another promotional job and he'll be exposed. He's got to grow. These fighters have got to go over there and win these fights. Otherwise, all we're doing is building the fighters up with hype, sending them into the world arena and getting beaten. We don't want that sort of thing to carry on.
Basically, we're setting them up to send them into a slaughterhouse.
Yeah, I don't think Kell's going to get slaughtered. I think
No, not in this particular fight. But I'm saying to build fighters up with unbeaten records and fight nobodies, and then go and fight against somebody.
I don't want to be too rude. I don't think he's been fighting nobodies, but I think he's been fighting fighters below.
No. This is not Kell Brook. I'm just talking in general, not Kell.
General, yeah.
But you build guys up, and they fight.
Well, that's what happens at our level, where they throw them into British title fights. I mean, there's been. I don't want to be talking names because people get upset, but there's been plenty of examples of recent British title fights where fighters that shouldn't have been in there have been having them.
Absolutely.
And haven't really had the proper grounding, proper experience, proper fights. They're fighting 80-20 fights, then having a really hard fight. Well, why aren't they in 60-40s before they have that real fight? Why are they not learning their trade properly first? Because the risk is nobody wants to risk them losing.
Let me take things and spin it another way. All right. My fight is 25-0, 26-0. Got a world champ. I've got a world title. I don't have to go abroad to tackle the best because you know what? I'm selling out shows in my place, in my backyard. I'm making enough money. My promoter's making enough money. I'm a golden goose to my promoter. Why else should I take a tough fight? What's the point?
But if everybody takes that attitude, we don't have people watching boxing. I don't care what anybody says, we haven't got the same audience that we had 20 years ago. And if that continues, people will become disenfranchised and they'll go to the unlicensed are selling out ahead of the professional boxing over here. You stage an unlicensed show in Milton Keynes, that will sell better than a professional show will. Now that's got to tell you something, because these guys are not very good, but they're both knocking each other silly. It doesn't interest me, but people are watching that because they're proper fights. MMA, everything else. Boxing is going to be a disenfranchised sport unless people work together and give people proper fights. Even lads that I've got a lad called Lee Markham that I took over for his last 2 fights. He's had 7 fights now. In his 5th and 6th fights, he's fought 2 other unbeaten fighters.
Wow.
Now, he knocked one out in the 3rd round, and one fight was going level, and he knocked him out in the 6th round. But they were both brilliant fights. Ian Lewis, the heavyweight I look after, I've just taken over. I put him in with an unbeaten 6-0 Welsh kid last time who was unbeaten. They've got to. This is my rules. They've got to have proper fights. If they're not good enough, they're not good enough. Go and do another job, because there's not enough money in boxing. You don't want to lie to them. There's no point lying to them. They keep selling tickets, and they're earning very little money, and then they go and try and earn big money and get demolished. You might as well find out beforehand, and then go become an electrician or something, or do something else with their lives. There's no point in becoming boxers just to feed promoters' profits. There's got to be something for them at the end of the line where they're going to be good enough to earn good money from the sport.
I'm going to talk about 2 fighters here in particular, Derek Chisora and Anthony Adams. We'll go with Derek Chisora first.
Yeah.
If you look at Derek Chisora's career, he was unbeaten up to the fight he fought Tyson Fury. He was out of shape when he fought Tyson Fury. He got beat by Tyson Fury. Okay, so he gets beat by Tyson Fury. So he loses at British level. This is just an observation, not a dig. Because I love Derek. You know I love Derek, and I love Don. Gets beat at British level. All right? Then he fights Vitaly Klitschko. Am I right? Yeah, he fights Vitaly Klitschko. Puts on a great performance against Vitaly. Again, still inexperienced at that level, and puts on a great performance against Vitaly.
So he had Hellenius before that, didn't he?
Oh yeah, Hellenius. Sorry, he fought Hellenius.
He beat Hellenius.
And he beat Hellenius. He beat Hellenius out of sight, but it was a poor decision. Okay.
Yeah.
So we can scratch that out. So at European level, a good win, but then still put down as a loss at European level. All right. Then he fights Vitaly Klitschko, puts on a great performance against Vitaly Klitschko, a loss. Then he fights David Haye, gets knocked out by David Haye. In terms of experience, he's fought some real top quality opponents, but his career is now in limbo. I mean, not in limbo, but it's really having to weigh up now because he's fought some guys now. He's got a lot of losses on his record. He's got quite a few losses on his record. He has fought some top opponents. But now you've got to say to yourself, well, is Derek Chisora good enough? Or was matched too hard too early?
Well, I think the easiest thing, I've had a lot of conversations. I'm very good friends with Don Charles. And it's probably better that my comments on that are kept to myself, because I feel, there's certain things I feel about Derek Chisora and his career. And again, I don't manage him, Frank Warren does, so they make the decisions that they feel are appropriate. All I would say is, if I was managing Derek Chisora's career, it would have definitely gone in a different direction.
Well, I have my opinions too, and I made them quite clear to Don Charles. I said to him that, Derek should have gone, me personally, should have gone down the route of fighting a few Americans that people knew about, winnable fights, and built his career up.
Well, I think you could have been his manager as well. Then we could have done it together.
I spoke to Derek at Nando's, and I said to Derek, listen, you got guys who are faded, old fighters that you could take your chances in and fight. Evander Holyfield was still floating about. Fight him, Rackman. These are guys you could have fought.
Shannon Biggs, James Tone.
Right. Now we're talking guys that the American public know.
And even the guy that won the prize fighter, Tor Hamer, the guy that's just come over and fought Kevin Johnson. These type of level opponents, Derek would beat them.
Guys. Fight those. I mean, he would have done it with Nathan Cleverly. No disrespect.
Maybe, and I don't know this for sure. And I'm just giving this as a personal opinion.
Yeah.
Black fighters generally struggle harder in the UK to sell tickets than say white fighters do. That's just how it is.
That is a big statement, and I can only respect you for that, because a lot of people would say will try and cover that over and try and push that to one side, but
That. I know that from my shows because I've got a lot of black boxers that I promote or manage,
Yes.
and a lot of white kids. So I know, and a lot of the black guys come to me and they say it's much harder for us. And Derek hasn't got as big a fan base as some others, and probably not the public perception. So his money is. He's probably, in terms of earning money, the money that can be made from Derek is better served sending him away to Germany than trying to build him on UK stages.
Well, I've said that to me, the way he's going, if they don't manage him correctly, he's going to end up being a journeyman, and he'll have a journeyman mentality. And
he's got to go and win this next fight with Manuel Shah. If he doesn't win that, then there's a problem. But again, you know, there's other people making those decisions and managing him. Everybody can look at any different boxer and say, well, I'd manage him in a certain way. I'm sure people look at the boxers that I manage and say, well, I'll do that differently. So that's their opinion. I haven't got a problem with that.
It's just an opinion, not a personal dig at anybody. You know.
Derek. For me, Derek has shown enough. He's beaten Hellenius, in my opinion, no doubt. And the Tyson Fury fight, he shouldn't have been in the ring. David Haye beat him comprehensively.
Yes.
But I believe that Derek Chisora could still be built as a serious world title.
So do I.
Tender. But I wouldn't be, if I was his promoter manager, I would probably be looking at building him up in the UK with 3 or 4 opponents that are going to test him, get his confidence back up, because Derek is a lovely guy, but his confidence can't be as high as it would be on the back of these defeats. So I would have been going at home next rather than going away. But obviously they've decided with Derek that's the best move, so that's up to them. But obviously we all have our opinions.
Interesting, because I'm of the same opinion as well, and I said this to Don Charles. But confidence is definitely what he needs, and Don understands that. So it's interesting. Now, the conversation that a lot of fight fans would be interested in is the one with Ali Adams. Ali Adams, you were involved with quite previously. There were some accusations made about Don Charles, which he's responded to. But your side of the story is an interesting one.
I mean, the thing is, I spoke to Ali after the interview on Friday. He rang me from Dubai. So I saw Don Charles on Saturday, and he's a good friend of mine. So I will tell you as it is, as I always do. I tell everybody there's no, I have my opinions. If people don't like it, it's tough, but this is how it is. When Ali, obviously, the thing with Ali Adams, let me tell you, Don Charles never got paid a penny for training Ali Adams for the Audley Harrison fight. He never took a penny off Ali Adams, so he'd done that for free, okay? The second thing was, obviously, it cost me quite a bit of money to get Audley over.
Yes.
So it was all done for Ali, you know that, right? So obviously the fact that he's allowed a substance into his body, however that is administered, is unacceptable, and he's let down both myself and Don Charles, and he knows that. And that's what he should be saying rather than trying to defend his position, in my opinion. He's let everybody down, and that's where he should have started from. Now, the inaccuracy that was on, I went to the UK doping agency with him, so I've been there all the way through because I've supported him, even after after it happened. I felt it was right for me to support him because I like him as a person, Ali, I really do. But there was an inaccuracy in the statement. He didn't take the injection in his neck. The injections were in his bum. They were not neck injections that he took. They were injections in the bum, not in the neck. And Ali had told Don Charles that the injections that he had received were in the bum, rather than neck. John Charles took that as an admission that Ali had taken drugs. Ali's position was that he had taken a painkiller with injections in his bum. Don Charles, so there was a misunderstanding. So Don Charles was repeating that Ali Adams had taken the drugs in his bum, which is true. Ali Adams was saying that, oh no, it was only a painkiller, and blah, blah, blah. So this sort of thing is a misunderstanding. Don Charles was obviously very, very annoyed with Ali Adams because he had let him down in taking this substance. Ali Adams is expressing denial that he knew what substance was going into him. And that's where it comes from. My position is that the UK doping agency have taken all the things on board and they have said that he's guilty and they banned him for 2 years. And that's the end of it. So there's not up to me to be judge and jury. Their position is that they banned him for 2 years.
He's banned. It's as simple as that. He's banned. It's as simple as that. But he said to me that basically that the drugs that were given to him, the stuff that he had, was from a cage fighter.
Yeah.
The injection came from somebody he didn't know. I called him stupid, basically.
Yeah, I mean, and the UK doping agency asked Ali to say, well, okay, tell us the name of who injected it. And Ali wouldn't supply that name because he said, oh, the guy's gone, he's disappeared. It doesn't look good, does it?
No, it doesn't.
Doesn't look good. Let's be quite honest and open. The only person that knows whether or not he has taken performance-enhancing drugs intentionally is Ali. Ali is saying that it's not. He has not done it intentionally. The evidence looks like he has.
The evidence.
I really like Ali, but I can't. I'm not there to judge him. But I think the things that he said about Don Charles were disrespectful, considering that this is a man that supported him, took him to Germany, done all this work for him, put him through a training camp for nearly 4 months, and did not get paid 10 pence.
I read over Twitter, and again, Twitter can be very inaccurate at times. But Twitter said Ali Adams is an ungrateful so-and-so because Mr. G put a lot of effort and invested a lot in him.
Well, you could say listen. I like Ali, so it's not whether ungrateful. Only he knows whether he's grateful or not. I mean, he hasn't in his interviews expressed disappointment that he's let me down once, has he? He's never said, I'm really sorry I let Steve down. He doesn't say that. He says, oh, well, Don Charles is the thing and this was an accident. You know, I've said to Ali, he should not. My advice to Ali was that he shouldn't do any more interviews because he's not coming across well in these interviews.
It's not clever, is it? I mean, I will have to do a return interview with him.
I've told him not to do any more interviews because I don't feel he's coming across properly. I don't think he's coming across well. And to go and say, I don't want nothing more to do with John Charles, blah, blah, blah. He didn't say anything bad about me, so there's no issue with me. And, I mean, I actually, as a person, he's a really nice guy. And
Don said the same thing.
Yeah, and my view is you get punishment, you serve your time, and then you do what you want. You know, it's like there's plenty of boxers who are in the sport who have done some serious criminal, prison time, and they are boxing. So at the end of the day, he's going to serve his sentence, whether he's guilty or not. That's a sentence that's been handed out to him, and in my opinion, that's the end of it. I think what I would do as a promoter from now on, if I was going to invest money in a boxer, I would now demand I would demand my own drug testing before I invest money in that boxer.
Wow.
That's what I will do from now on.
So the whole Floyd Mayweather drug testing, are you with that?
Yes.
The other thing I'm hearing, or as we said, when this Ali Adams story came out, a lot of Twitter fans say, well, you know what? He's not the only one. There's loads of them doing it. But the ones that are higher levels don't get caught because they're bringing money into the sport, whereas someone like Ali Adams isn't.
That's what I hear as well.
So we'll leave it as that then, shall we?
I think we should. I think realistically we can all hear what we hear, but without evidence or whatever, it's not worth saying it. But I think there's a lot more going on. And if you look at the differentials in America, I think it's a 9-month ban, isn't it, for steroid use? And it's so much more lenient in America than it is in Britain, and they seem to be overlooking certain things in America, and some of the things that I think in certain that people accept that it's going on and they turn a blind eye.
Lamont Peterson, I mean, something happened with him and now he's back.
And what about that Andy Lee fight with
Sergio?
Chavez?
Well, exactly. With Chavez, yeah, exactly. What about? I know Enzo Macronelli had a situation where he was banned, and then he said that he read about it in a magazine, I believe, and then he got off it, and then, I don't know.
But Enzo Macronelli I read what you read, but Enzo Macronelli got a 5 to 6 month ban, I think it was, for a diuretic. That's totally different than taking something that enhances your performance, right, or does something that his was not a performance enhancer, it was a diuretic. So he shouldn't have taken it, but it's not in the same level as some of the other stuff that we've got out there that people are taking. Wow.
So all your fighters will be drug tested without a doubt.
The ones that I invest in.
Yes.
If I'm asked to invest, so for example, if I have a fighter where I decide to spend an awful lot of money and I'm going to invest in them, then I want them drug tested. I will have them drug tested before I do it. Yeah. So, but it'll be literally random.
So okay, let's talk about Steve Goodwin, the promoter, through his eyes, looking at a fighter. What sort of fighters do you like, Steve?
Honest ones.
Well, okay, that's
the actual, believe it or not, the first thing I look at is not actually their ability as a boxer. It's them as a human being.
Will you invest in me then?
Afterwards, how many tickets do you sell?
After the show, I'll talk to you about it.
No, the first thing is, listen, I have a thing in life. I'm totally transparent, and I tell everybody the truth, and I wear my heart on my sleeve. If I find somebody doesn't do the same, I don't care if they're world ranked number 20, I won't deal with them anymore. It's as simple as that. So I need to establish whether they've got the same sort of strategy, same mentality that I have, and the same thing to give their all and be totally transparent and tell me the truth and everything else. So I want to like them. If I don't like them, I can't promote them. So I can't.
You don't like if you like someone. You don't like.
I'm serious.
I will say something here though. I'm gonna say something that might be slightly controversial. There are managers, or there's one manager. There's one manager who's not mentioning his name. It's a him for sure. That, from my observation, it doesn't matter if he likes you or he doesn't like you. It's business.
Yeah.
And if he don't like you, he's going to send you to a slaughterhouse. He will get that world title shot. He will give you that world title shot just to see you get smashed to bits and take the money for it afterwards.
And that's why I don't have to do that, because I make my money from other businesses. So I do not look at a boxer as a money ticket. And it's crazy. My wife did not want me to manage boxers. She said to me, I promise you, 6 months ago, she said, if you manage any more boxers, I'm divorcing you. She said, I can't cope with it. So I said, she was half joking. But I said to her, so what we then agreed was that the ones that are going to drive me crazy and just be a hindrance rather than a help, I won't take on. So I'm looking for the ones with the right attitude. So if we establish they've got the right attitude, then I've then got to establish whether they've got the boxing ability. If they've then got the boxing ability, then that's great. If they've got the right attitude but are limited and they can only go a certain level, I'll still help them. But so they haven't all got to be British world champions, but I'm obviously looking at the right type of attitude as the criteria that we can work with. Because listen, if a guy's going to work hard and his level is area champion, if I can make him help to make him an area champion, and he can retire from boxing and be totally delighted he's achieved his goals and it makes him happy and his life's enhanced, that's great, isn't it?
Absolutely, that's applaudable. That's very applaudable. Not every manager's got that mentality. And like I said, if the manager likes you or he don't like you, he knows you're going to get a smashing.
No, I cannot do. I mean, I'll give you an example. I've got a young lad that I look after called Billy Kaiser, who lost his last fight. He was knocked out in the second round. Ooh. When he got put down in the second round, what had happened? He had some problems outside the ring we didn't know about, but anyway, blah, blah, blah. When he got knocked down in the second round, I had to walk. You can watch the fight on YouTube. You can see me walking away from my seat. I couldn't watch because I felt it. Because I really like him and I actually feel it. And if I don't feel that for the boxer, I can't manage them.
Ooh. I'm going to mention Mick Hennessy because he's got for me, it looks a great deal of Channel 5 because he's brought boxing back on television. I mean, that's a fantastic deal. With he's got Tyson Fury, James DeGale, and Chris Eubank Jr. Yeah, that's three there. The career of Tyson Fury, he's now fought Kevin Johnson. So he's fought somebody in the world rankings. Think what you want of Kevin Johnson. He's there or thereabouts. He's in the world top 3 now. Yeah. So I guess that's good for Hennessy Sport. I mean,
hasn't he done a good job though, Mick Hennessy? He's avoided fighting David Price without causing too many ripples.
Absolutely.
They ran from that fight, but yet Mick has been smart enough to manoeuvre Tyson above David Price in the world rankings and getting the fights he's wanted. I think Mick's done a brilliant job, and he's done a smart job as well.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, the Fury Price fight, how do you think that's going to go? I think, personally, at this minute in time, Fury has fought more testing opponents and been in more fights than Price has, where somebody's throwing punches back.
I'd agree. I think that when you see the Price... I actually would have said 2 months ago Price would win that fight fairly comfortably. That was my view. Yeah. But I think you saw enough in the Skelton-Price fight that when Skelton actually put it on Price and threw some punches at him, he seemed to sort of panic.
Didn't know what to do. And I've said that, you can't keep having fights like that because eventually someone is going to come at you. I mean, what do you expect? Your 45-year-old comes out of the corner and goes and chuck punches at you. This boxing. What do you want Skelton to kiss him? I mean, let's be real.
Yeah, I'm not... I mean, I would actually... This is going to sound controversial. I would actually fancy Derek Chisora, if he had 2 warm-up fights, to give David Price a hell of a fight.
I think that too, because
not now, not on his next fight.
No, I said the same thing to Don Charles. Said give him 2 fights, 2 meaningful warm-up fights and stick him in with Price. I'd stick him in with Price. No disrespect to Price.
We need to work together, you know. We obviously think too much alike.
You know, it's like look. There's another fight I think for Darren Barker. I think the only fight for me, I think he could winnable at world level or good chance is against Daniel Gill.
Yeah, no, I'd go with that. They're sending them. All the others are going over to be sacrificial lambs to Martinez, and doesn't make any sense.
Better skill set, Martinez, and you know.
That's it. End of. It's just it. And so I totally agree. I mean, to be honest, they'd have been better off fighting amongst themselves, Murray, Barker, Macklin, all having the British, and then the best one could have gone forward. That'd have been better doing the Eubank, Ben Watson type.
That's how it worked. That's how it did work. That's how it did work. They all fought together, and then the best one kind of went forward.
That's what should have happened. They're all fragmenting and all having their little pop at Martinez for the payday. But is that really doing anything for British boxing? Really? I don't think people are getting. Are the British public going, oh, it's really exciting. Martin Murray going over to fight Sergio Martinez. Okay. Well, you might see it on the internet or Twitter forums, but the public at large would say, who, what, when?
Let me ask you another question.
They all fought, they all fought together. There'd be a name to come from it.
There's another word they use on national television which makes me cringe. It's called world class. Can you explain to me what world class means? Because I thought world class meant that you're consistently performing against other opponents at that level over a period of years or a period of time.
Well, I think world class seems to be when promoters bring their opponents over, that they're ranked in the top 40 in the world, fiddled into an alphabet ranking, and they're qualified to fight somebody who's got a pulse. So that's world class. So we'll sell the fight. He's got a world class opponent.
These are boxing pundits. These are guys that we're supposed to trust and believe in. As a casual fan, you say, oh, Joe Bloggs, yeah, he's world class. He's definitely world class. And I'm thinking, well, okay, based on what? He's only had 21 fights. So he hasn't fought in world class for 2-3 years because he's been fighting novices and guys who hardly had a pulse. So now he's world class. Excuse me, I don't get it. But maybe I'm just talking rubbish or I'm going a bit sick in the head. But he's not world class. He's maybe domestic class.
Totally agree. But if you could take, for example, Gregor Foxer,
yes,
who won and lost against Kerry Hope.
Yes.
Would you have said that Gregor now he was described as world class? I read that he was a skillful Polish boxer, blah 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 blah. But he lost to Kerry Hope the first time, and then he went out and got smashed up by Golovkin. He's not world class. Gennady Golovkin's world class.
Golovkin's going to be fighting Misha Rosado's the guy that Misha Rosado's marketing, Gabriel Rosado. So yeah. That's going to be an interesting bout for as long as it lasts.
I think Golovkin's special.
Pardon?
I think Golovkin is special.
He is. He does. Does he move?
Not as special as Broner though, but special. I think Broner's the one.
Okay, right. Other questions. Let me know a bit more about the guys you've got in your gym or your stable.
Well, at the moment we've got heavyweight Ian Lewison.
Yes.
Who is trained by Don Charles, but I took him over last year, and he had his first fight with me. He beat an Eastern European.
Who was he with beforehand?
He was managed by Bruce Baker, but Bruce isn't a promoter, so he was struggling to get fights because we're going on about the thing we spoke about earlier about black boxes and tickets, and Ian's one of those. He struggles to sell tickets. So it was very difficult for his manager to do that much with him because, well, there were two issues. One, he's lazy, doesn't like to train. I mean, his manager used to tell me a story last week. He said he used to send people to knock on his door to get him out running, and Ian would hide to avoid to come out running. And Bruce said to me it was driving him crazy. So he was obviously he was unmotivated for training, but then Ian's view was he's obviously not a motivated anyway, but he didn't know when the fights were coming because Bruce would arrange a fight, Ian wouldn't do the tickets, so the fight would be cancelled. So Bruce was struggling to get him on shows. It was a real difficult problem. So they were both struggling. So I took Ian over, and on his first fight for me, he fought on a show against a guy called Istvan Ruzinski, and he was absolutely terrible. He could throw about a punch every 20 seconds. It was really bad. So I went and said to him, look, unless you go to Don Charles, I can't work with you because it's just not good enough. And he worked with Don Charles for his last fight, and there was a massive... He's nowhere near there yet, but there was a big improvement. But it's up to Ian now. He needs to work the Don. You know, Don Charles is quite a tough trainer, and he's got a certain training regime that he expects fighters to commit. And for me to promote Ian, he has to go with Don Charles, because at least I know what's going on. I can't invest money in Ian because it is an investment in him. That if he hasn't got a regimented training regime, and that's what we've imposed for him. So it's up to him to keep that training regime going. So if he does it, he's got the talent, all the talent in the world to really make it. Nice guy, but it's actually keeping that motivation and that training regime going for him.
Okay, anybody else you've got?
Right, there's a couple we're signing at the moment. We're looking to sign in the next week, which obviously till up there they're quite very talented, but until they've signed, I can't say that. I've got a very talented middleweight called Lee Markham, who we spoke about before.
Yes.
He's definitely will be up to fighting at British title level in due course. He's only 24, 7-1. He shouldn't have lost that. You know, the one happened before I had him. He was sent as an away fighter to a show, and there was no need for him to. He sells loads of tickets, and he lost a disputed decision. So Ian is learning his trade, and we're just going to keep building him. And he will be, he'll be there, but he's not going to have. You won't find with Lee Markham that every fight he has will be against somebody who's not fighting back. Everybody he fights will be fighting back, and by the time he gets there, he's going to be ready because he's going to have done all the preparation and had all the fights and had all the problems. And that's what I want. I want when my fighters get to these titles that they are really ready to fight for them. They're not just going there as cannon fodder.
Okay.
So he's very exciting.
So are you open to taking on other fighters at the moment, Steve?
Well, I'm open. I meet quite a few. I don't take on as many as I meet. I'm open to meet. We're looking to sign the fighters with the right mindset and the right attitude. It isn't about them being British champions. They've got to be champions of some sort. But I'll deliver them all their titles that they want. But they've got to have the right attitude.
Okay, let's say a fighter's already in contract. He wants to get out of the contract because he's not happy with the manager, and you think he's
not for me. Can't do that. I have that all the time. You can't. It's wrong to talk to a fighter who's under contract. So first thing I say to a fighter is, "Are you under contract?" And he says yes, and I say I can't do it. Ian Lewison rang me a year before his contract was up, and he was with Bruce Baker, and I rang Bruce Baker up and said, "Bruce, Ian's ringing me. He can't ring me. You need to speak to him and sort it out." So I'm totally above board. If you're in a contract, you've got to fulfil that contract.
Wow,
And if they've got a problem, they sort the problem out.
And then they come and deal with you afterwards.
Yeah.
Right. I'm going to ask you now. If people want to contact Steve Goodwin and Goodwin Promotions, have you got a website?
Yeah, it's www.goodwinpromotions.co.uk.
That's pretty simple. Say that again.
So we're all on there. www.goodwinpromotions.co.uk, and on there's contacts and everything like that on there. They can come and talk to us. We talk to people all the time, and if there's common ground, then we'll look after them. What we do is we'll give 100%, but if they can give 100% back, then we can work together.
And also Twitter, because I know you're on Twitter. That's how we started talking.
Yes, Stephen G Goodwin, PH. Stephen G Goodwin. You can contact me on Twitter as well.
Excellent. Steve, it's been an absolute pleasure. Do you know, it's great talking to people that are honest, open, transparent, no hidden agendas, no bullshit, it's the truth. And, it's just great. And fans love that. They really do.
And you keep up the good work, because you're doing a brilliant job with your shows as well. So anytime, it's been a real pleasure.
And when I come back to the UK eventually, I'm going to be chasing you down and, having words and come to your show.
Sounds good.
Thank you so much, Steve Goodwin.
Cheers, Ingram.
Bayloric TV.
Thanks a lot. Cheers.
I hope you enjoyed the interview with Steve Goodwin from Goodwin Promotions. It was very refreshing to hear a promoter talk with such honesty and so much openness. For me, doing the interview was a pleasure because, I was finding out a lot more about boxing, the running of the sport and fighters and how certain managers' mentalities are. And we need people to speak up like this. So again, my hat's off to Steve Goodwin for being so honest and so open, and for taking his time out of a very busy schedule to talk to Bayloric TV. Thanks for watching.